while I was waiting for this coffee in that coffee queue, all I did was scroll on my phone. But when I was in US, standing in the same coffee queue, waiting for my coffee, I saw at least 10 conversations between random strangers talking about their dog, the previous day's game, the weather, anything and everything. Only after a point I realized that they didn't know each other when they picked up their coffees and said goodbye to each other. But we in India here, all we do is... Now here's what I noticed when I was tracking or observing this small talk during my 10-day, 2-week trip to US. The Americans, when they enter an elevator, they would say, "Hey, beautiful morning, good morning, isn't it?" Or when they're standing in a coffee shop queue, they would say, "Nice weather," or talk about the game that happened the previous night. At a gym, they would greet, they would say, "Good going." When they go to a store, instead of just waiting for the transaction to get over, they're almost discussing the weekend plan or the plan of the storekeeper who's just about to log out. And when I think about the Indians, our habits, when we're in the elevator, we're probably just looking at our phones or waiting, looking at the number just to get out of the lift. Or when we're standing in the coffee shop queue, more often than not, we're scrolling on our phones than trying to have a conversation with the person standing in front of us. When we're at the gym, we're waiting for that person to finish their set so that we can take the equipment. Or when we go to a store or department store or a shop, any shop that we go to, we're waiting for that billing counter person to just finish packing as soon as possible. We hardly try to have a conversation with the person. At first, I thought Americans were more friendlier, but then I noticed something different. Theory called as weak ties theory. In 1973, a sociologist called Mark Grenowater did a research on how people actually get their jobs, and it was a shocking revelation in terms of what numbers said. 70% of people got their jobs through someone they knew. When I say people they knew, not friends and family. The second level connections, who we call as the weak ties. These weak ties are people who they barely knew. When I further researched why this happened, it was because your immediate family, friends who probably know the same thing that you know or working on the same thing that you are. They move in the same circles, they have the same information. It's the weak ties which acts as a bridge to a newer circle, newer information, newer industry, and hence newer opportunities. So let me show you the math of this weak ties theory. Imagine all of us have got this 5 or 10 at max real close friends or family, and these 5 or 10 people probably know another 100 or 150 odd people when you think of their connections. If you do a multiplication of this, 115 to 10 is about 1500 people. That's your total reach when you only focus on your close friends and family. But when you look at your weak ties, the acquaintances, the people who you just barely know, you probably have about 150 of them. And those 150 have another 150 acquaintances. Multiply 150 with 150 and boom, the number is 22,500 people. So what was 1,500 is suddenly become 22,500 when you focus on your weak ties. And that is exactly how, by not having small talk, we're losing the opportunities by up to 95%. And when you think of those examples, those places that I mentioned, at a coffee shop, there's a possibility that somebody says, "Hey, by the way, we're looking for a Salesforce consultant, or we're looking for a strategist who could help us in this space." Or in an elevator where you get to know, "Oh, we actually have some openings in this role. Why don't you apply for that?" Or while having that small talk with the person at the gym, you might know about a new company that they're starting up, and you never know about an investment or a co-founder opportunity. Now, these are extreme possibilities, but it is a possibility. There are people who have stories where this has happened. And notice all of these examples are not coming from a deep, meaningful conversation with a known person. They're all coming from so-called small talk that you're having with strangers. And it made me wonder, and of course you're also wondering maybe, how can small talk do all of this? And then I learned it's basically about building trust. And trust apparently has an equation to it. I'll put it here, and it basically says trust equals reliability plus credibility plus intimacy divided by self-orientation. And let me show you how small talk works each of these elements and builds the trust eventually. Credibility. A lot of these people who are doing small talk are dropping these credentials casually. Statements like, "When I was at Google," or "When I lived in Silicon Valley," or "When I studied in Harvard." Things like these are indirectly creating some credibility because of past work, past study, or past experience into these conversations. And it makes a huge difference when you build that credibility through casual mentions. And mind you, this is not about bragging, this is not showing off. This naturally happens when you have a conversation with somebody, and this blends into that so seamlessly. The second element here is reliability. And reliability through small talk is built by repetition. Same place, about same time, similar people, and things change. And what you talk changes day by day. So maybe day one, you're almost saying, nice game yesterday, or good morning, nice weather, things like that. Maybe after a week, where do you work, or what technology you are in? Maybe a couple of weeks from there, you already know where they're doing, what they're doing, and the questioning would become more specific, such as, hey, how did your deployment go? Were you able to close that deal you mentioned last week? If this happens for a month, the conversation would almost go to introducing somebody, because you have context, you know their expertise, and you might say, hey, I think you should meet this person, great guy who can help you, give some frameworks, some experience that they've got from XYZ place, XYZ company, and so on. And this is happening through repeated conversation with same people at around same place, around similar topics. Third element here, intimacy is unique but very important. Small talk creates this small intimate space for safe sharing. And if you think of levels here, level 1 is where you're just talking about weather, yesterday's game, etc. Level 2 is when you're discussing weekend plans, what they did yesterday. Still very generic, you're still not talking professional. Level 3 is when you slightly get into the professional aspect of challenges that they're facing at work, with their boss, with their promotion. Level 4 is where you are in a space to discuss real problems, real solutions, specific challenges. And this is happening only after you cross level 1, 2, and 3. The tendency is that I think in our culture, or Indians, more or less operate at level 4. When we try and operate directly at level 4, it fails more often than not. But we're very good when we operate at level 4. But Americans, they build through these levels. Intentionally, unintentionally, consciously, subconsciously, doesn't matter. But that's the pattern that I observed, and is a very successful pattern when you notice the results that have come out of it. Finally, the denominator, the self-orientation. Key to small talk is about them, not you. So questions like, how was your day? What's your weekend plan? How did that presentation go? What brings you here? Are you new in this company? And that makes the biggest difference in the small talk. Not belittling or complaining, but when I observed my own behavior, or most of our culture here in India, we end up talking more about us, more about our family, our culture. Basically, we are always waiting to talk about ourselves. But in this context, in small talk, and especially the Americans, it's mostly about the other person. These are questions which makes the other person talk and feel like having a conversation. Now, when you think of it, it's really the culture which is making the difference. So I made a breakdown of these cultures, the Indian versus American. And no, it's not about being fake or real. It's about context. I learned that there are two types of cultures, a low context culture and a high context culture. And here's how you differentiate between them. A high context culture such as Indians, Japanese, Chinese would have the following attributes. The meaning comes from who we are. It matters a lot where we come from, our background. Our words are probably lesser important than the context, than the background. Silence is comfortable. Don't mind being silent in a large crowd. And relationships come ahead of that transaction that we're looking to have. When you look at a low context culture such as Americans, Germans, Australians, meaning comes from what we say, what they say, or what they do. There's lesser importance of your family, your background. Words carry all the meaning. So what they say, what they do is really important. Silence is not so comfortable, so you will see more often than not them talking to each other in large crowds. Finally, it's the transactions which is building the relationship and not the other way around. All of this affects businesses or careers quite a lot. For example, if it's an Indian style, that email that we are writing would have a lot of context before we ask what we want to ask. Or when we walk into a meeting room, we try to give a lot of context before we actually hit the business end of the conversation. Trust is built through who you are, your background, your family, and what you've done in the past. And the network growth, the network, not network, happens more often than not a third person introducing us and not by ourselves. And if I take the same examples for an American style context, those emails are much shorter. They would get to the point straight in one line or in the second line. Now, most of us also use this, but that's the American way. Trust is built through interactions and not by your background. And their networks grow through this small talk, not waiting for a third person to introduce them to somebody else. Now, I'm not saying which one is better. I'm just highlighting the difference between these two cultures so that we use them to our effect. Because not adapting costs us promotions, opportunities, network, and eventually our career shift. And if you're a smart person, you would know when to switch this. If you're talking to an American, you would start with a small talk. If you're talking to an Indian, you would start with more context. You would read the room and match the style, and eventually use small talk to bridge the gap whenever it's needed. To build the context based on whether it's a low context person or a high context culture that you're interacting with. Now, here are the professional benefits of small talk, doing small talk. And I've broken it down into 4 categories. First one is visibility. When you do small talk, your boss remembers you because you possibly had a weekend plan discussion with them at some point, part of the small talk. Your senior level management also knows you. People from other departments know you because you had a good conversation with them over coffee. People from other companies also know you because of your small talk conversations with them at the event or the conference that you attended. You expand your visibility through small talk. The next category is promotions. When the discussion about promotion is happening in that room, likability does play a big role, and it matters as much as your performance. You like it or not, that's the real world. Third category is opportunity building. Now, if you don't know, 70% of jobs are never posted publicly, and it is through these acquaintances, through these weak ties, people get to know, people apply, and almost clear that interview. Because each small talk that you're having at all these places is kind of an informal interview. Whether you like it or not, we all know that when we apply for a job through a reference, the chances of us getting that role becomes much higher than otherwise. So every conversation is a potential door opener for an opportunity. And finally, the fourth category, which is protection. When layoffs hit, you don't want to be in the first line of firing. This small talk, in some or the other way, protects you from being in that first line of firing. Not saying it is entirely avoidable by doing a small talk, but it does make a difference. Because of visibility, you've cut down the possibilities of you being in an unknown category of people who are being laid off. Now, those are the 4 direct career benefit categories when you engage in small talk. And when you don't engage in this small talk, here are the disadvantages as well. You are not seen as a team player. You are labeled as a poor communicator. You'll be skipped for that promotion despite your great performance. And you'll probably be the last one to know about that opportunity by the time it hits the newspapers. And maybe you might be the first one to go off when the layoffs happen. Now, none of this might sound as fair, but it's the reality of professional work. Now that we've established small talk is important, why not have a framework to do this small talk in a professional manner? I've divided this into 4 levels. So the level 1 is called as environmental. Things like having a busy day, quite hot out today, too much of rain, it was a great game last night. You're making statements which are all trying to get permission to engage in a conversation. So this level is basically permission to engage. Level 2 is what we call as situational. What brings you here? That's a nice coffee that you had. Are you new here? We haven't seen you in the past. Things which are relevant in the situation. Your questions are situational and asked in a way which will make the other person speak, and you will know whether the person is opening the door to the conversation or not, or having a conversation with you or not. The next level is called as professional level. Questions like, what do you do? What's your industry? Where do you work? About your profession, because this is the level where you're trying to find the common ground between your work and their work, because eventually we're talking about careers here. So anything relevant to work is a question here. The goal is to find what is common in your work and their work. The last and the final level is value add level. By this level, you probably know this person's background, work, where are they working, industry. Thereby, you are giving some value add. Hey, by the way, I saw that video which was great for marketing, which might be useful for you. So check that out. There was a book that I read about AI, which you should definitely check out because it's going to make a huge impact in your industry. Hey, here's a solution I found for the challenge you mentioned yesterday when we met at the elevator. In all of this, you're trying to give some useful value, information, reference to the other person, and that's why this level is called value add. Now, if you try to take these 4 levels and put them in practice, let's say I get into an elevator and we got to go to 12th floor. Here's how it would look like. The moment I enter, I'd probably say which floor, and I press that button, which is very environmental, level 1. By the time I cross the 3rd floor, I might say, if I see the person getting off a call and very busy, tense face, having a busy day, looks like a busy day, very situational, 2nd level. Now, by the time we cross 6th floor or 6th level, haven't seen you here before. Are you new here? Where do you work? Slowly getting into the professional zone. By the time we cross the 9th floor or almost getting to our elevator, my 12th floor, by the way, you look new here. Try that burger at the cafeteria on 6th floor. You'll love it. So I'm leaving with some useful information for that person to consume. And then I say bye. So in all of this, we've done level 1, 2, 3, 4. We said hi. We use a situation to say a busy day. We inquired about their work because they look new in the building. And then we gave them a tip for that burger/coffee shop that they should try out. Now, naturally, this is going to keep me in their conversation list when I meet them next time. In 30 seconds from level 0 to level 12, I've made a conversation which potentially puts me in a space where I'll probably get to know a job opportunity before somebody else does, because I know this person, and I will get that job opportunity as a reference and maybe have a slight upshift in my career when I need one. By the way, here are 5 things that you should absolutely avoid while having this small talk. Number 1, don't make it about don't start telling your life story to them. Number 2, when you're asking these questions, don't make it seem like an interview or an interrogation. Number 3, avoid monologues. Let them talk. It's anyways about them, not you. Number 4, just keep it light. Don't try to discuss something which is super serious. You can't engage in a super serious long conversation when you're having a small talk, because normally these are shorter durations, lighter, and with strangers. And finally, the most important part which you should absolutely avoid: do not judge. Do not make fake comments just to increase likability. Do not try to come to instant judgments and say, oh no, not this, not that. You hardly know anything about the person that you're engaging with. So avoid judgment at all costs. Now, I'm not saying you have to like it, or you have to become American, or you have to leave our Indian counterpart. No. But you have to understand one thing, that by not doing small talk, you are not trying to keep up the cultural pride. You're actually committing what I can call as career suicide by not engaging in small talk. So here's a challenge for you guys. Tomorrow or next time, try this. Try to have a small talk with 5 new people, strangers, at those places that I mentioned. Use the 4-level progression that we have discussed earlier, level 1, 2, 3, 4 of kind of small talk that you can have with people. And during all of this, remember, the focus should be on them, and you are only giving value. So it's always about them and not you. And then the magic will start unfolding, because within a week, you will see opportunities open up which you were not expecting. Within a month, you will have a broader network that you're looking at. And within a year, your career trajectory will change. Not because you're fake or doing random conversations, but because you're finally speaking the language of, should I say American, should I say professional, should I say corporate, I don't know. But you're finally speaking the language which is going to take you to the next level. So the choice is yours. Do you want to stand in silence with your competence and performance? Or are you going to use small talk to make career progress the way I am going to do, by picking up my next coffee, standing in the line for 5 minutes and trying to speak to at least 2 new people and see what small talk can bring me next in my career. I'll see you.